This is a short presentation on how to build an ambitious plan. Hi, this is Stuart Corrigan from Vanguard in Scotland, and I'd like to just show you this short video, which is a really excellent method for how to build a plan, especially when you're working with a team when potentially there's a little bit of resistance in order to build a plan, or some resistance in terms of the objective, that maybe they think that the objective that you have is just a little bit too grand. So let's just say that our objective here was to establish a new measurement system for the organisation. So the first thing we're going to start with is the obstacles. In other words, what are the things that would stop us from establishing the measurement system if we wanted to do it tomorrow? And what this allows you to achieve is it allows you to understand what things are currently in the way, and therefore what are the actions that would need to be put in place in order to overcome these obstacles. It also allows those that maybe feel somewhat sceptical about the achievement of this plan to get what are potentially real, good and live blockers to being able to achieve the plan, which is very useful to help you make sure that you capture everything that is required for the actions. So let's just say that the first obstacle here, was we have no visual measures board. This is in no order at all. Let's just say that the next obstacle was we have not agreed what will be measured. Caption another one. We have no method of gathering the data and updating on a regular basis. And let's just say the final obstacle was that the management team don't understand how to problem solve and use the new measures. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is something which is called a sufficiency check. And the sufficiency check is to make sure that we've captured all the obstacles. So what we're going to say is, if we had a visual measures board, and if we had agreed on what would be measured, and if we had a method of gathering the data and updating it on a regular basis, and finally, if the management team did understand how to problem solve and use the new measures, would we then be able to establish a new measurement system? And if the team were to say, well, no, you've actually missed something, and let's say that something was, so let's just say that the next obstacle was we have no designated person for updating the visual measures board. Again, we would do the sufficiency check, which is, if we had the visual measures boards, if we'd agreed what would be measured, if we had a method of gathering the data and updating it, if the management team did know how to problem solve, and if we did have a designated person for updating the visual measures board, would we then be able to establish a new measurement system? And hopefully the answer now is yes. In which case, we now move on to stage 2, which is we now capture the actions required in order to overcome the obstacles. And hopefully again you see the psychology at play, which is, first we allow people to potentially vent their frustrations, vent the obstacles, and then we say, okay, what's required in order to overcome those obstacles? And again, all the time, the people that will be an integral part of the project management plan, of the plan, will actually be telling us what the obstacles are, and building the actions. So let's just say we have no visual measures board. Action 1 would be, so order a visual measures board, agree where the board should be situated, and again we're going to do this quick sufficiency check again, which is, if we order the visual measures board, if we agreed where it should be situated, is that sufficient to overcome the obstacle, which is we have no visual measures board? And let's say that the action is yes. We've not agreed what would be measured. Let's say the action was arrange a meeting to define the new measures. The second action was capture some baseline data on the new measures. And again, we're going to keep doing this sufficiency check, which is if we'd arranged the meeting to define the new measures, if we'd captured some baseline data on the new measures, is that sufficient to overcome the obstacle? Now what I'll do is I'll just go on and put in the additional actions to overcome these obstacles, and then when we come back we can move to the next phase of the plan. Okay, we're back. As you can see, what I've now done is taken the additional actions required to remove the obstacles. So again, we would do a further sufficiency check, which is, in the case of this obstacle, we have no method of gathering the data and updating it on a regular basis. The sufficiency check is if we'd arranged a meeting to decide how best to gather the data and decided who should gather the data, and we'd written a program to extract the data from the current management system, would that be sufficient to be able to remove this obstacle, which is we have no method of gathering the data and updating it? And again, hopefully the answer would be yes. Next one is the management team don't understand how to problem solve and use the new measures. Again, we do the sufficiency check, which is we do our actions and then do the sufficiency check, which is if we'd written a short course on problem solving, invited the management to the course and run the problem solving course, is that sufficient to be able to overcome the obstacle? The answer again in this case is yes. So what we now want to do is we want to establish the new objectives. In other words, the objectives that we're now trying to meet, given that we have now put in place actions to overcome the obstacles. And let me just show you how this would be done. And this would be done by simply, I've done it here on a PowerPoint slide, but in actual fact the way that we would do it is we would do it simply by using post-it notes. And what we're now going to do is do what's called a necessity check. And the necessity check is to make sure that we put the objectives, which as you can see are now written in present tense, written that way so that when we got to that point on the plan, then the objective would be achieved. What the necessity check does is it makes sure that we have the objectives in the correct order. And the question we're simply going to ask is, in order to have first done X, should we first do Y? So in other words, in order to have agreed what will be measured, must we first have a visual measures board? Well, I guess in this case it would probably be the other way around. So we'd probably say, in order to have a visual measures board, should we first have agreed what should be measured? Absolutely. And let's take the next one. In order to have the management team knowing how to problem solve and use the visual measures board, should we first have a visual measures board? Well, that would probably be a good idea. And must we first have agreed what would be measured? Absolutely. So let's just put this one up here. Next one is, in order to have a method of gathering the data and updating it on a regular basis, must the management team know how to problem solve and use a visual measures board? Well, probably there's no real dependency there. What if we did it the other way around? In order for the management team to know how to problem solve and use the visual measures board, must we first have a method of gathering the data and updating it? Not really. No real dependency there. So let's do the check on the next one. In order to have a method of gathering the data and updating it on a regular basis. Must we have a visual measures board? And again, not really. In order to have a method of gathering the data and updating it on a regular basis, should we first have agreed what will be measured? Well, I would argue absolutely we should. Therefore, the dependency sits here, which is between this objective here and this objective here. Let's capture the final one. We have designated a person for updating the visual measures board. So in order to have designated a person, must we first have a method for gathering the data and updating it on a regular basis? I would suggest yes, in which case the dependency is here. Simply what we now want to do is agree some time scales, some rough elapsed times, and in this case we have agreed what will be measured. Well, let's just assume that that would be a one-day objective. We had a visual measures board. Again, let's just say very short objective, half a day. The management team know how to problem solve and use the visual measures board. Well, we'll think about the actions, which was design the course, invite them, run the course. That's possibly a 3-day objective. We have a method of gathering the data and updating it on a regular basis. Potentially, that's about 4 days. And we have a designated person for updating the visual measures board. Again, very short objective, maximum half a day. So what we can now do is we can now simply join up the dots and see exactly how our critical chain fits together. And let's just put in some arrows. So there's a dependency there. So now, having put in arrows, we've established that our critical chain, which is the longest chain, which is 1 day, 4 days and 0.5 days, is 5.5 days. That's our longest chain in order to achieve our end objective. So we now have our plan, and the final thing that we then do is go back to our original plan, and what we're going to do now is we're now going to capture all the actions required in order to achieve each of these objectives. And as you can see, we have the actions up here, and with the team that may be the team that's actually carrying out these tasks, what we're then going to do is we're going to give these tasks out one at a time. We're going to give them a very simple instruction, which is do the task, do it as fast as possible. We don't want to give them a due date because we don't want to artificially extend the time by them taking the time required in order to fill the due date. We simply say do the task, do it as fast as possible, and if you get blocked, come back to me. And what we would then do as the project manager is check with them once a day and ask the question, what's the remaining duration? So there you have it, a very simple way of building a plan, especially where potentially you have quite a large objective to achieve, and the team are maybe a bit sceptical about the ability to achieve that objective. If you'd like more information on managing in project environments or building plans or project management generally, if you go to the website, which is systemsthinkingmethod.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon. Goodbye. If you'd like more information on systems thinking, go to systemsthinkingmethod.com. If you liked the mind mapping program I was using, then go to mindgenius.com, and where you have the opportunity to enter a discount code. If you enter the discount code MGVANG, then you will get a discount on this particular program. Thank you again. Bye.